What you doing?
Waiting to register for the Public Lands Alliance conference.
All right.
Yeah.
We're talking tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow. Next Gen Stewardship. Something.
Guardians of the something or
Yeah,
other.
Guardians of the something. Guardians of the Public Lands.
Right, that's us.
Strategies for Next Gen Stewardship. Something along those lines.
All right.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Born ready.
Fantastic. Let's do it.
Okay.
What you think about that, dude? Oh, this is so epic, bro.
Still doesn't.
Yeah. That's kind of where we're at. This is
What are you doing?
fluffing my hair, man.
Why are you doing that?
Because I'm getting ready to speak at the Public Lands Alliance conference.
Okay.
And we're presenting about the programs that we host at Sequoia National Park.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we're just here. We're at the Hilton in San Francisco.
All right.
And we're getting ready for our presentation.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's do this.
Okay.
All right, good morning, everyone. I am so impressed we've got this many people. I thought there was going to be a couple of friends here at 8 o'clock. And so thanks for all of you for getting there early. I know there's a monster line at the coffee place, so you guys are here. We're going to go ahead and get started because we only have 45 minutes, and we want to save a good chunk of our time at the end there for you to ask questions. So I will turn it over.
Awesome. Hi. So a PSA before we get started. If you're thirsty in the back, there's a foot pedal on the water machine. It took us a while to figure that out, so you're welcome. All right, I'm gonna have a seat. So how's everybody doing this morning? Welcome to Public Lands Alliance. My name is Sydney Williams. I'm here with Daniel Huecker and Michelle Payan, and we're going to be presenting about the event series that we collaborate on at Sequoia Kings Canyon National Park. And before we get started, I'd love to acknowledge that we occupy the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone people, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. We wish to pay our respects to the elders and members of the Ohlone community and their continuing education and connection to the lands, water, and culture. So today we're going to be talking about Hike and Heal, which is our event series that I host through my nonprofit organization, Hiking My Feelings. We'll start with some introductions about who we are, and then I'll give you a summary of what the event is about and how we came to collaborate on it and all the benefits that the three of our organizations are seeing, and obviously how the how the participants are benefiting as well. So a little bit about me. I am Sydney Williams. I am an author. My first book was named one of the best hiking books by Audible. My next book comes out a week from today, and I'm so excited! Outside of that, I am the founder of the nonprofit Hiking My Feelings. We are on a mission to improve community health, and we do that by exploring the intersections of environmental stewardship, personal well-being, and mindful movement. When I'm not doing any of that, I'm also a wilderness first responder. I work with the Desert Institute at Joshua Tree National Park. Hey, Joshua Tree, nice to see you in the house. I also work with the Field Institute at Sequoia Kings Canyon and the Sequoia Parks Conservancy. And the program that we started with Joshua Tree that has since evolved into Sequoia that we'll be discussing today, this year we're also excited to expand that into Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument with our partners at Grand Staircase Escalante Partners. We're also working with the Glacier Institute at Glacier National Park and Zion Forever Project at Zion National Park. So we're going to talk a little bit about the inspiration behind how we all got here. And in the spirit of how we format our events at Hiking My Feelings, we follow a 3I format. It's the pillars of our programming, which is inspiration, intention, and integration. So in the inspiration spirit of that, what inspired me to do the work that I do today was a transformative healing experience that I had in nature. I grew up riding my bike around the neighborhood. I wasn't outdoorsy, and it wasn't until I was at the height of my career in corporate communications that I went backpacking for the first time. And I was probably about 70 pounds heavier than I am today. I did not train. I thought wearing hiking boots at my standing desk was the same as breaking them in. Pro tip, that doesn't work. And so that first experience was a deeply physical experience for me. All I could think about was how much my body was not performing the way that I wanted it to, but it really revolutionized my relationship to self. And then the second attempt that I did on that trail, which was the Trans-Catalina Trail in 2018, because I had been training and I was much more prepared, I was curious. I was like, well, what if hiking itself wasn't the hard part? Like, what's available to me in nature from an emotional perspective? And I had discovered a couple weeks before that trip that I had been hiking my feelings instead of eating or drinking them, and that's where the name for our organization came from, was just a mountaintop idea that, like, whoa, I was in the pursuit of managing type 2 diabetes, and I couldn't keep eating Ben & Jerry's for breakfast, nor could I drink a bottle of wine to myself every night anymore. So I was like, oh, I'm hiking my feelings, that's fun. And then I had a incredible experience on the Trans-Catalina Trail in 2018, so much so that when I got off the trail, the first call that I made wasn't to my friends who were like tracking my progress and cheering me on, wasn't to my family who was like probably pretty sure that I died on a mountain somewhere. It was to the Catalina Island Conservancy. And the first thing that I said was like, hey, your trail has changed my life. How can I protect and promote it? And so they connected me with their naturalist program. I became a naturalist for Catalina Island. And then they introduced me to the folks at REI, because REI sells a Trans-Catalina Trail adventure, and they were looking for somebody to speak to that experience. So what started as an idea on a mountaintop is now 2 books, our nonprofit organization, and since we started in 2018, we've hosted more than 400 events around the US, and we've introduced thousands of people to the healing power of nature. So I am super thankful to be here today. From a physical perspective, like, I don't know if I would be on this planet holding this microphone if it wasn't for the experiences that I had on Catalina Island. So first and foremost, if you guys leave here like you're like, this already is not fun, if you just learn nothing else from this conference, please accept my gratitude for the work that you do on behalf of public lands that makes experiences like the one that saved my life possible. And with that, I'll hand it to Daniel.
My name is Daniel Huecker. I'm the Field Institute Director for Sequoia Parks Conservancy, and we're the nonprofit partner with Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks. And before I came, I'm still relatively new. This is my year and a half at this point. But before this, I was a teacher and a school administrator, and I wanted to experience education in a different context. And I think the outdoors is an amazing opportunity to do that. And it was also at the time whenever our area was experiencing some catastrophic wildfires, and I hiked up into the park quite a bit, and to go in after a wildfire and see these giant sequoias that have been living for thousands of years lying over on their sides, smoking, dead, and they've never been killed by fire before. I knew that there was something really catastrophically wrong, and I wanted to be involved in figuring out a solution for it. So that is my inspiration, is that I feel called to Sequoia, and the public lands are this wonderful healing place. And so whenever I got the opportunity to do this job with Sequoia in Kings Canyon and heard about Sydney and what she was offering, I got really excited. And so my inspiration is also the idea of collaborating between really remarkable individuals. And I think all of you know people out there that are really remarkable, and you just need to get together with them and figure out how can we work together to transfer that energy and excitement to our visitors. And I'll pass that to Michelle.
Thank you. Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Payan. I was born and raised in East Los Angeles, California. I am currently an intern, a community volunteer ambassador at Golden Gate National Recreation Area. And so what inspires me to continue to do this work, coming from Los Angeles, growing up in an urban environment, I didn't have access to green spaces, and I didn't know anything about conservation or native plants until I was in college. And I got really active in local grassroots organizing that combined mutual aid initiatives and direct action in order to sustain and build local restoration projects. So I essentially discovered the act of stewardship by volunteering in my own neighborhood with my own friends. And it was these groups that taught me about native plants, their medicinal uses. We would pull together resources to purchase greenhouses for folks. And my favorite was we would even tear out people's lawns and turn them into native plant gardens. And it was my community that taught me about conservation work on public lands. It was their passion and their commitment to healing disturbed landscapes that made me care in the first place. And so since then, I've worked at 3 national parks. I was an intern. I did restoration and seed collecting in the Santa Monica Mountains. Last year, I was a community volunteer ambassador at Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks. I worked in the Volunteer in Parks program there, which is how I've come to know Sydney and Daniel. And I'm currently the CVA, the Community Volunteer Ambassador at Golden Gate National Recreation Area. So it was volunteerism that got me my first foot in the door and what now has become a lifelong passion and potential career.
Yeah.
Give it up for Michelle. The youth, everybody, the youth. So before we move on to our next section, I just want to share a little bit about the inspiration behind the event series. Like I mentioned, when I had this transformative experience in nature, I was like, how can I protect and promote this? So 1, to increase awareness that this trail even exists, and 2, to ensure that future generations will be able to enjoy the experience that I just had. And I thought to myself, I was like, is this a replicable thing? Like, can we create an environment that would allow people to have a similar experience to what I had? And could I develop programs that would open that up for people? Turns out we can, and it's fun. So my initial inspiration, speaking to Daniel's point about the catastrophic fires in Sequoia Kings, I was sitting in a cabin in the middle of Maine in the winter, because that's what people do. You like to go to Maine for the winter. And I was just sitting there, and I was getting ready to log on to the Sequoia Parks Conservancy's Giant Conversation series, and it was a mixture of the superintendent from Sequoia Kings Canyon, Savannah from SPC, and a fire ecologist, somebody from CAL FIRE, like experts talking about the history of fire suppression, how we haven't been doing a great job with fire management and all the results that we were seeing as a result of that, and what we were doing moving forward, and talking about prescribed burns and really kind of tapping back into the indigenous way of managing lands. And I was sitting there and I was like, my mental health practices are my prescribed burns. When I go out for a hike, when I meditate, when I journal, when I do the things that bring me back to center and bring me back home to myself, that's like my version of a prescribed burn. So would it be possible to connect the dots between our mental health practices and our self-care practices and how we're managing public lands? Could that be a way to connect a new generation or a new audience to these places? So it started with just a conversation with the Sequoia Parks Conservancy. I was like, hi, I have an idea. I don't know if this is anything that you've ever done before, or if you're even interested, but my dream life would be to host an event like what I experienced in Sequoia, to hopefully introduce a new generation of stewards, introduce a new generation of donors, and really benefit the community to connect them deeper to place. And Katie, at the time, was the director of the Field Institute. She was like, this sounds awesome. So we sold it out in 4 days. We hosted 2 events. We listed it on a Thursday. I was hosting a retreat that weekend. By the time we got back to service on Sunday, it was all sold out. So there's a demand for these kinds of programs. Every single one that we've ever hosted anywhere has incredible interest, if not all the way sold through. And the participants are seeing life-changing benefits from these programs. So the way that it works for us is in the context of Sequoia Kings Canyon, and as I've learned as we learn to expand these programs, everybody's different. So I'll tell you how we do it at Sequoia, and then we'll navigate how to do it with other parks. But the Volunteers in Parks Department at Sequoia Kings assigns my group a project, and then I develop a custom program that mirrors and draws inspiration from the wilderness of Sequoia Kings Canyon and how we can connect the dots between what's happening in our inner wilderness, all the things about being a human, and how that relates to the wilderness that we're exploring, protecting, and preserving. So we have this service project, I develop a program, and then we partner with the Sequoia Parks Conservancy to layer in some of their already existing naturalist-led programs that they offer to the public. So in the spirit of Sequoia Kings, for the last 2 years, we've been working on a meadow restoration in Round Meadow, and we have been removing an invasive species of orchard grass. Now this project within Sequoia Kings has been happening for the last 7 years, and we've been supporting it. It'll be our 3rd year this summer. And even just the fact that this one project and this one meadow has been happening for 7 years is already a connection point between inner and outer wilderness. Because you don't come to one conference, you don't come to one retreat, you don't read one book, and you're like forever healed on the top of Healed Mountain, right? Like you have to continually keep showing up for yourself, showing up for your community, and doing the work. And so each summer we see the amount of land that needs to be restored, words are hard, decreasing by 50% every year. So the project is working, and we have people that are repeating because they want to see the progress that they've made on those projects. So It's a really cool format, and then we tie in some of the Sequoia Parks Conservancy programs. Specifically, we do a astronomy program on Saturday evening, so we walk out to Sunset Rock. Rebecca from Sequoia Parks Conservancy leads us through the astronomy program, talks about the dark sky as a resource that we should also be protecting, reminds us that for time immemorial, humans have been looking up at the night sky, wondering what's going on up there, and connecting us that way. And on Sunday, we do a beautiful tour through the giant forest where we learn about the history of mental health in the National Park Service, how the Mather Party brought out a bunch of folks from Washington on a backpacking trip through what is now Sequoia Kings, and that is what started the National Park Service. So the history of mental health in the National Park Service is already there, and those stories deserve to be told. And when we do it in partnership with a service project, so we do this meta restoration, and then we teach at my organization about invasive thoughts and limiting beliefs. So if you know what your invasive thoughts are, those negative thoughts that boop around in your head all the time, if you know what those are, where they come from, and how to reframe them, and then you go out in a meadow and you're yanking plants out of the ground, not only are you healing yourself, but you're also healing the land. So it's not enough to go and extract healing from these spaces. We like to heal with the land rather than just on it. So as we think about what the intention is for these events, before we do that, I'd love for you to take just a moment to yourself and think. We've talked about what inspired us to do our work, the inspiration for this event. I'd love for you to think, and if you have a worksheet, you can write in the worksheet or write in a journal. Just what are you doing that is empowering you, and what is your inspiration for the work that you do, and what continues to inspire you to show up to do work? Like I said before, if you take nothing else from this, just take my gratitude for the work that you do. So as we think about moving to the intention side of things, my intention was just very simple. I want to see if it's possible to recreate the experience that I had, and we've been able to do that. And the benefits that the participants are seeing is incredible. I mean, everything from one of our participants from our August retreat in Sequoia last summer, after this event, she's like, I am on a health kick now. I realized how important it is to balance the mental health aspect and the physical health aspect. She was pre-diabetic when she showed up to my event. She's now no longer pre-diabetic. So there's physical health benefits, there's mental health benefits, and from a community perspective, we had 10 people from our Sequoia retreat in August come to a similar format in Zion last year together. They were previously strangers, and 10 people from that event traveled together from all over the country to reunite again 2 months later in Zion National Park. So what's happening here is we're developing a really deep connection, because if we're sitting around in a circle and we're talking about some of these really vulnerable topics while we're in a vulnerable landscape, it all works really well together. So my intention for the thing was just like, let's see if we can recreate this. And from a SPC perspective, Daniel, I'd love to know, like, what is the intention behind continuing to host these programs?
Thanks, Sydney. I think one of the things that I think about when we talk about intention is that as a park partner, we really need to be focused on the needs of our partners. And within Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks, they have a volunteer program. They also want to host and facilitate more deeper connections within the park. And our interpretive rangers do an amazing job, but their schedule is very limited. And so they are able to do 20-minute, half an hour, maybe an hour-long programs at most, but they can't do the 1 day, the 2 day, the 3 day things. And so one of the things that our park partners have asked of us is, can we take on some of those activities and provide those to our park visitors? So that's one thing, is just having a good conversation with your park partner about what are the things that they would want to see happen, but they can't do for whatever structural reasons. And kind of look at your own self in your organization and say, is that something that works for us? And I actually get into this in more detail in my talk tomorrow around sustainability. But I think that that's the key thing for you, is if you're doing something because it's convenient or it's easy or it's really hard, but you can only do it for one season, then you have to kind of take a step back and ask if that's sustainable. So work with your park partners and think what that is. The other part for Sequoia Parks Conservancy is it sustainable for us financially? And so whenever we look at these things, we're always trying to figure out how do we balance our budget. And with working with Cindy and Michelle, the partnership works out really well, because Sydney's able to provide this really engaging weekend where people have these amazing deep connections experiences, and that's a deep connection with Sequoia as well, and that touches our mission. And then same with Michelle, has all these wonderful projects that need hands-on work. And so we're providing volunteers to them, and they also have a volunteer camp where our guests can stay for free. And so that cuts down on our overall overhead costs because we're able to provide lodging. So that collaboration there is something that we couldn't offer, but the park could offer. And so whenever we're working through these different pieces, we want to look at what are our needs and what are our partner needs, and how can we work together to achieve all of those things. So like Michelle, I'm going to ask you the next question then, in terms of whenever you're engaging volunteers in the park, what are you trying to achieve out of that? Why are volunteers so important?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, and from an NPS perspective, I'm kind of here representing the Park Service, not only Golden Gate, but Sequoia from the year that I worked there in the Volunteer Parks program. There are essentially two approaches to volunteerism, and I'm going to use a metaphor in the words of Adrienne Marie Brown, Emergent Strategy. She uses the phrase mile wide, inch deep versus inch wide, mile deep. And so in volunteerism, mile wide, inch deep are those large annual volunteer projects where you recruit 50 to 100 people to come out to plant hundreds of plants. You do a lot of work in a short period of time, and these projects and programs are really, really successful, and they're integral to the Volunteer in Parks program. We know that it's a really important first step and introduction to stewardship on public lands. However, I think the inch wide, mile deep approach is kind of an untapped resource. I mean, how do we get people to create more meaningful and deeper connections with community and the lands they steward? I think this program, Hiking My Feelings, offers a really prime example. They target a specific issue that draws people in and invites people into a fully immersive experience, and that's what promotes that community engagement and volunteer sustainability. So we know that this isn't a brand new concept. We know people naturally heal when they go to the outdoors and share spaces together. And as I was saying, a lot of the opportunities are typically that first step, that first introduction that the Park Service offers. But with programs like this, it's a way to keep people engaged and coming back and returning to continue to step forward as stewards. And I think, you guys have a great partnership. It's really inspiring to see the ways that you guys can connect, mind, body, and spirit, and with the intention of performing a service project.
Thank you.
Okay, so for yourself, on your sheet, in your brain, in your heart, and your spirit, what are some partnerships that you've been dreaming of? And when you think about this, and take a few moments while I inspire you to dream as big as you possibly can. Imagine your budget is unlimited. You have unlimited resources. You have all the talent, all the time, everything you could possibly need to execute what you want to execute. What does that look like? Like, dream as big as you possibly can, and then if you need to step it down from there, you can. If you need to ladder down from there, you can. I wrote on the corner page of a journal in 2015, I was like, wilderness retreats, ? And now, this year, we get to execute on the full expression of that vision, almost 10 years later. So it doesn't have to be a thing that you go and execute your biggest dream right away, but if you know what you're working toward, then you can start to ladder up to what that might look like from a full execution perspective. Okay, so if we're talking about integration, speaking to the integration part from a Hiking My Feelings perspective, we're taking the concepts and the self-reflection framework that I've developed through Hiking My Feelings and the books that I've written and putting that into practice. Because if I'm going to ask you and invite you to spend however long it takes you to read one of my books or listen to a podcast or read through our resources, I also want you to experience that for yourself, and I want to give you an opportunity to experience the healing power of nature and put these concepts together. The other part of this is that our healing journeys are so deeply unique to us. My lived experience and your lived experience, my worst day, your worst day, they're going to be radically different. But the people that circle up around the campfire with our events, we all have at least one thing in common, and that's that we've all survived our worst day and we're here to still talk about it. And on top of that, we all care enough about the planet to take time out of our busy lives to spend our hard-earned money and come and have an experience where we are putting ourselves first And we're doing this healing in community because we can't do this by ourselves. Yes, our healing is our responsibility, and ultimately, my doctor can't do it for me, my therapist can't do it for me, the guru on top of a mountain can't actually do my healing. That's my responsibility. But that doesn't mean that we have to do it alone, and in fact, I would argue it's near impossible to heal alone. And I think, if anything, the pandemic has shown us that. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but like 2 weeks ago, I realized I suck at hanging out. I completely forgot how to be a human that is social and in community, because we've been, outside of the experiences that we create, we live and travel in our van. We volunteer at Sequoia Kings Canyon in the summer, so we are in the giant forest by ourselves 5 out of the 7 days a week. I see like maybe 3 humans if I'm lucky. I actually kind of prefer that. But like, we are so deeply disconnected from the planet from which we came. I think that this room is kind of an exception. You guys clearly all understand the benefits of public lands, but in general, the people that we're serving, the visitors to our spaces, they're looking for something. They're looking for something for themselves. They're looking for any kind of meaning or connection, and we have the opportunity to give them that. So from an integration perspective amongst the 3 of us, to be able to get out of our silos and to expand and to collaborate and to truly build something fresh together that is new and exciting and something that hasn't been seen before and something that's been deeply impactful for both the people that facilitate it, myself, and our partners, but also our participants and their families. Like the ripple effect, speaking to the inch wide, mile deep, the ripple effect of going to something like this and having such a transformative experience for self in community, the ripple knows no end. Because when you show up on Monday after one of these events and you're like, whoo, man, I needed that, hello, then your family's like, what are you on? Like, you're like, I'm in the woods, man, like I feel good. And you bring that energy into work, you bring it to your home life, you bring it into your relationships. And when you have a positive experience with somebody, I mean, think about somebody like, if the lady at Starbucks knows your name, that perks you up a little bit. The guy at Urban Kitchen or whatever out there, granted I have my name badge on, so that was funny, but he was like, Sydney, here's your change. And I was like, how'd you know my name, dude? And I felt so good. Granted, I had a name badge on, but like even just feeling like that can transform your day and the day of everybody that you come into contact with. So from an integration perspective, to be able to co-create with 2 different organizations and to bring all of our strengths together, to Daniel's point, the Rangers don't have time to do this. To Michelle's point, they don't either. So to be able to bring a multi-day experience into something and give that deep connection is by far the best opportunity we have for integration. So Daniel, riff on integration. Tell us what it's all about.
Well, I think whenever we're talking about integration, one of the resources that I found really useful was a book that came out at our last conference, Don't Lead Alone. And our group actually went through that book and kind of tried to take some of those lessons. And I would say that the key idea there is that we are all these individual organizations, and we all have our own unique challenges and problems. But whenever we reach out to other organizations and we reach out to other partners, it's hard. It's a lot of work. I mean, even just doing this program here, we had to meet together online, and we have to agree on a style and what we're talking about. And that's not easy. It's a lot easier to just do something by yourself. But whenever you're working with other partners, you come up with a much better way of engaging folks, and they challenge you in ways to do things that you wouldn't have thought about. And so whenever I think about integration from a park partner's perspective, I really think about how we can reach out to other partners and connect not only with public but private, with individuals that are highly motivated. And so think outside of your own organization and what you can do there. Michelle, how would you think about it in terms of when you have volunteers coming into the parks? I mean, that's a real diversity of folks, and how do you engage them, knowing that they're coming from all different backgrounds and needs? And
Yeah, for me, I think the future state of volunteering should be a pathway to have some of these intimidating conversations that we don't typically have in our day-to-day lives. I think the parks are a platform for dialogue, and typically mental health or mental wellness, rather, is an aspect of spending time in the outdoors that we don't typically talk about. It's just like a matter of fact. You go outside, you do service work, people walk away feeling good. but why not give a platform to the people and the organizations that have the tools to facilitate conversations around mental health and bring that to the forefront? You know, the parks are places where we can discuss really complicated issues that impact all of us. And so what we're suggesting isn't, of course, like we're kind of alluding to go back to your NPS counterparts and add something to people's plate. I think volunteer coordination is often seen that way. But there are people, there are organizations, there are clubs, collectives, schools that would be happy to integrate these tools as part of the work of the National Park Service. And the connections and the networks, they're already in this room. You know, the mental wellness aspect is something that doesn't have to be left unsaid anymore. I think it's really important to facilitate these conversations, especially in a volunteer aspect. You know, people put so much effort and time and attention to even just show up. And so creating a community, creating a space where people can have really deep, meaningful, profound connections to the land that they're stewarding. Yeah, this program is a perfect example of how to do that, of starting small and witnessing the impacts from there. You know, and it obviously takes a team. There's 3 of us up here. There's not just one person presenting about this program. You know, it took all 3 of us. We were representing a tri-org agency that it took to sustain this program. And so this work, it takes a team, but the work is worthwhile because of the legacy it creates.
Yes, ma'am. She said legacy. How does that feel? You want to create a legacy at your organization and a deeper connection with your land? We all do. Yes, we do. Okay, so from an integration perspective, you're at the Public Lands Alliance, y'all. Like, this is the time, this is the place. Everybody that is your peer and the work that they do with their different areas, we're all here. We're all gathered. So who can you meet? What are the different steps that you can take? What can you do this week to move the needle on programs like this in your organization and on your land? That's a really great question. And I think to kind of tie things all together here, thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about our inspiration for the work that we're doing and the collaboration that's possible, because I think when we're talking about the importance of establishing a deeper connection to place, we all have the most incredible opportunity to give people the experience of a lifetime. And we're already doing that in some capacity. The natural resources that everybody in this room manages are astounding and awe-inspiring on their own. I remember the first time I drove into the Yosemite Valley, I cried when I saw El Cap. Same thing when I saw General Sherman. I saw somebody hop the fence, and I was like, it was one of those moments. Have you ever had this happen where the voice in your head comes out of your mouth? Like, somebody jumped the fence at General Sherman in Sequoia, and I was like, are you for real? Like, I was so upset, and I felt so deeply protective of that place. And I know I'm not the only person. So if we give people an opportunity to show up for themselves, to show up for community, and to show up for our public lands, we're all winning. We win, they win, and the participants win, and the planet wins. So if there's anything that we can do to inspire you or any questions that we can answer, we would love to take your questions. And if you are ready to make a difference, like, let's go do this together. Anything we can do to help and support, we are in, because this is some life-changing work and we'd love to do it with you. Thank you for being here. Good morning.